past Saturday night at UFC 286, Leon Edwards defeated Kamaru Usman via unanimous decision. Majority decision. The scores were 48-46, 48-46, and 47-47. Was that the correct decision? What was the key difference in this fight for Edwards, who this time did not need a late rally to win the fight? Mike Bond, we come to you for the first take.
Yeah, I thought the scoring was appropriate. I mean, I could have seen it being a draw with that point deduction there. I think that was maybe something you could make a case for, but I did think Leon won 3 rounds. The first, second, and one of the other ones, I think it was for him like the almost perfect performance of what you need to do coming off that first fight. And you asked what the biggest difference was, and I think it was, of course, the takedown defense, right? Like he seemed to have Usman's entries and the adjustments he wanted to make within the takedowns pretty well scouted. He didn't let him connect the hands. If you were listening to Daniel Cormier talk about this, he was able to fend off a lot of them. Of course, as you see there, he did get down a few times, but never to the point where Usman was able to control him for a prolonged period, inflict some heavy ground and pound or damage or get close on a submission attempt. So if you're Leon, like this is exactly what you needed to do out there. Of course, like the stand up, he attacked those legs a lot, man. And you can kind of see from the beginning, he was trying to go low so he could move up high. And he almost got him in that 4th round. I mean, that one head kick that he threw was like almost a flashback. It was really close there, but obviously, Usman, he gave him credit post fight for being able to, upgrade his defense a little bit and have that one scouted. So yeah, like a good performance by both guys, but Leon, I think he showed that he was more prepared for this fight and he knew what he needed to do to go in there and win. And I think put any questions about the ending of the second fight to rest. Was it a fluke? Was it this? Was it that? I think the more that you kind of look at this fight, you see that maybe in fight number 2, things like the altitude and all that kind of stuff did really affect Leon. I think this was a bigger reflection of what he is as a fighter. So definitely congrats to him. I think this was a good performance. At worst, a draw with the point deduction, but I don't think Kamaru Usman won.
Okay, fair enough. And yeah, there was a point deduction there. That's why those wonky scores of 48-46 2-time. The 47-47 was really a 48-47 for Leon Edwards. But the point deduction came from a fence grab, one other way to avoid the ground, and a controversial way of this happening in fights where the point is getting taken away, but the position that the grappler wanted is no longer available. But yeah, I haven't heard any excuses from either side, and I don't believe there's too many people that think that was the possible difference here. All credit to Leon Edwards. Great fight for him. Goes, how about you, man? Reaction? Did you like that score, and what was the key difference?
So I actually, the night of, scored it a draw. I have no problem, though, with going the other way towards Leon Edwards. It was a really, really good fight, and it was an absolute blur because it was so much fun and there was so much going on from the beginning. Like, even if you go before the fight even started, and I think this is part of one of the keys to Leon Edwards' win, was his confidence and his swag. I think he really did get in Kamaru Usman's head early on in the week. I think he pissed him off, and I think that's what got Kamaru a little bit away from his wrestling, right? If you look at the first minute of the last fight, okay, the fight before, look at Leon Edwards, all right? Now look at him in the first 30 seconds of this fight. It's a complete different demeanor. His stance, the way he's looking at him, he just had this swag and this confidence about him that he could pull off whatever he needed to do to win this fight. It's almost like they switched roles for this fight because Kamaru Usman kind of looked a little different. He looked a little shook. He's in enemy territory. There's people screaming at him, yelling at him, reminding him of what happened the last time they fought, which was one of his worst moments in front of millions and millions of people. So I think the pressure did maybe get to Kamaru Usman a little bit, but it's so hard to evaluate his performance because of how good Leon Edwards looked. I felt like Leon Edwards would have beat just about anybody that night. That's how good he looked, man. He embraced that home crowd. He embraced his role, and he had confidence in himself. And I think that, along with his level changes, his defensive wrestling, that he just blended everything in for the perfect performance.
Mm-hmm. And Fada, you were at the O2, so now you're my go-to. Tell me, man, what were you feeling that night at UFC 286, and what did you see transpire here, the big key difference for Rocky?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference, or the biggest deciding factor was impact. I think everything Leon did just seemed to have a little more impact than Kamaru, because a lot of these rounds were really close. All of them pretty much were. There was no round that was necessarily clear cut for anybody. So when you look at the way the first round started, Kamaru was a little tentative, and you could tell that, you know, Leon was convinced all fight week that that head kick knockout would affect him mentally, and you could tell he was a lot more tentative to throw. I think when you look at Leon's work, I think he just did a perfect job of not expending too much energy, countering at the perfect opportunity. He just, from the body kicks, you know, it's funny, they were chanting like headshot dead. I think the body shots are kind of what the major difference was here in this fight. He was hitting him with some really big body shots. He landed a good knee. His strikes just seemed to have more impact. Kamaru was pressuring a lot, and he was able to briefly get Leon down, but Leon did a great job of getting back up. So I don't think it was necessarily a bad performance from Kamaru Usman. I just think it would have helped him out to kind of throw more, just higher output. Round 3, I kind of feel for him, because that fence grab, there's the point deduction, but then they stand them back up. That was a position where if Usman maintained it, who knows, you can't say that for sure, but that could have been, you know, if they gave him that position back, he maybe could have just stayed on there and won that round definitively. I believe 2 of the judges gave that round to Leon, which ended up in a 9-9. So yeah, I mean, it was a close fight, but I just think overall, Leon Edwards, everything he did just had a little more sting, a little more impact, and that's always not only makes a difference in terms of the damage, but in terms of the judges' eyes.
Now, you three did a great job of unpacking this and answering the question. And here's another thing. I mean, we talked about X's and O's strategy, what we saw with our own eyes. Here's something that Teddy Atlas tweeted on Fight Night. Regarding Usman and Edwards, the old-time trainers used to tell me that winning a title immediately improves you 30%. He said that prior to the fight. And I want to ask you all, could it be just that as well? Like confidence and also fighting in your home country, that can possibly be the difference? Mike, we'll go back to you. Let's go to Goes. Mike, I can't hear you right now. Let's go to Goes real fast.
I think there are cases where that has happened, but I don't know that you could put it across the board. And the case would be this. I mean, like, how many people have won championships and have been unable to defend them, right? They and that's where that old saying is, you're not really the champ until you at least defend it one time. So I'm sure there are fighters that you can point to where you can say that, but there are a lot of them that have failed in their first title defense. So I guess I kind of disagree a little bit.
Mm-hmm. All right, Mike, back to you. Did you see anything just from him being champ that maybe makes someone better?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all quote, but I do think there's something to it for sure. I mean, in Leon's case, it seems like there was that on the night, but I think he thought he was capable of performing like this in the last fight as well. He just couldn't get the ball rolling in that one. And this, I think, was, as I said earlier, a much stronger reflection of who he is. And there is one thing I guess I want to address that I didn't really talk earlier about. You mentioned the fouls and stuff when it came to Leon. There was a lot of like weirdness to this fight, right? Like, it felt like the momentum couldn't ever truly get going because it was like one interruption after the next. And I did think that took away from it a little bit. And you have, Colby Covington out here saying, I think in an interview with Submission Radio, saying that Leon's a dirty fighter and all this stuff. I don't know if I want to go quite there yet, but if you combine, the Bilal Muhammad fight, which ended in an eye poke, with this, which had, a glove grab, short grab, eye pokes, groin kicks, all that stuff. It's starting to build a case that doesn't reflect too well on Leon. So hopefully this is just something we don't ever have to talk about going into future fights, but there is a bit of a pattern forming. But ultimately, as far as you say, I think Leon's performance, putting all that aside, definitely was an upgraded version. I think it was all those things you said, man. He was so confident in there, and how could he not be? Look at how he put away Kamaru in the last fight.
Yeah. And Fada, you've heard Kamaru said now he has to deal with additional media and a lot of pressure, and that could maybe make a difference. The verbal warfare and the mental warfare, was pretty top notch there, like keeping it subtle without having to shove each other and, incidents in the hotel.
Yeah, I mean, Leon was oozing confidence all week. That kind of made me be on the fence a little bit. I did originally pick Usman, and I was wrong. Granted, I don't have the best track record this year, but just watching Leon's demeanor all week, I mean, he was extremely confident, because it's easy for people to call things excuses. It kind of reminds me of Amanda Nunes, Juliana Pena, when they fought, and Amanda came out and said, talked about sickness or injuries and stuff. And I was like, excuses. And then she went on and she dominated the rematch. So when people come out and talk, sometimes it works against them because sometimes they're valid excuses, but people dub them as excuses. And he was talking about the altitude a lot leading up to this fight. And he kind of showed that, it was a factor in their second fight, excuse me. And he came out here and was able to kind of fend off what Usman had most success with, which was the grappling. And we've seen Usman drop Burns and put him out. We've seen him knock Jorge Masvidal out. We've seen him, finish Colby Covington. But on the feet, Leon showed that he had a significant advantage, and we weren't seeing that from Kamaru Usman. And he came into this fight even more tentative than the last one when it came to his strikes, which helped him close the distance and get those takedowns. So I think that was big.